All right, so here's a video on how you're going to get the best out of the TrackGod VST. Now, this is an interactive video manual, so as long as you're not on a mobile version of YouTube, then if you look on the left side of the screen, you'll see that there's main sections. You can click through those sections and skip to whatever you want, whenever you want. And then when you click a main section, you'll also be able to skip through the subsections whenever you want. Now, I'm going to start with the getting started section. Now, this green box right here, this is where you're going to select your presets, your sounds. So you're just going to click the sound, the name of the sound, and then your list is going to pop up and you can choose whichever sound you want. And then you can also browse through the sounds by using these arrows right here. You can go this away or that away. Now under that is your bank section. Now you can just click the image and then you can select through your different banks. You can also use the arrows to browse through the different banks. Now, if you are browsing through your banks and you see a bunch of locks on your banks, you only see the default bank, but you know that you bought the VST, then that means that you probably didn't download all of your banks. Please check your email for your login information, and if you already have it, then just log right in and all of your banks or a link to your bank should be on your home dashboard. Now, speaking of new banks, another button that we have in here is the Unlock New Banks button. Now, if you click this, and this is going to take you to the web page of all of our new banks. We try to release 2 to 5 every month. Now, the very last part of the getting started section is just this little volume bar. You just use that, and then of course this is the volume meter. All right, now let's talk about the cool stuff, the one knob effects. Now, as you can see, there's more than just one knob in every section, and there's about 5 sections, but each section has about one main knob. It's usually the biggest knob, and then the rest of the surrounding knobs are already preset to sound good if you just move the main knob. Let me show you. So let's start with the special section. So let's say you got a nice little lead going. But let's say you wanted to do a transition from your hook to your verse, and instead of using it as a lead, you wanted to use that as a riser effect. Well, you would click this button here, turn it into a riser, push the up button. And now you got a dope riser that you can use as a transition effect. And you can also turn it into a downer. Now, the next thing that we have in this section is the Gator. So the Gator is basically like a on and off effect. There we go, but let's turn the Gator on. So we're gonna click here, select one of those. And last but not least in the special section, well, we got the Wobbler. You know what that is, you're gonna get that dubstep type wobble. So here we have the regular bass. And with the wobble, now again, we're gonna go more in depth with how to customize all of that, but for now, we're just showing you the one knob effects. Now here you have the low pass filter, and this is basically how you get what a lot of us producers like to call that Drake underwater type sound. So all you gotta do is move this big knob here. Let's hear the regular sound. And there you go. Next up, we have the high pass filter, which is how you get what a lot of us producers like to call that telephone effect, sort of. Not full on, but it gives you that similar type of sound. So let's start with the regular sound. Now let's crank up the knob. Little more. And now we got the reverb section, which is how you get like that bigger sound, that bigger arena sound. So let's say we got a brass here, like a dry brass. You know, it's cool, but let's crank up that reverb, that big ass reverb knob. With no further delay, let's get to the delay, aka the echo. So let's start with the plain sound. Yeah, that's cool. And the next one knob that we have is the vibrato knob, and this is going to give you that like shaky or that vibrating type of sound. So here we go with the regular. Crank up the vibrato knob. So that was the vibrato. And next up we have the glide. Now this is going to give you a nice little gliding sound from one note to the other note. So let's start with a regular melody. Crank the glide up. And sometimes it sounds even smoother if you actually turn this mono button on as well. Now, a lot of people also use this trick on 808 basses and pretty much any other sound that you could possibly think of. So those are all of the one knob effects. And now we're going to go a little more in depth because there are a few other sections on this VST. And then with the sections that we've already went over, you can get a little more control and customization beyond just the one knobs. So let's go a little more in depth with the reverb section. So as you already know, you can crank this big reverb knob up and you already get a bigger sound. Pretty easy. But we also have these other knobs. We have time, we have arena, we have dimp, and then we have lag. So what time does is it basically determines how long the reverb is actually going to last. Now if you turn it down, you get a quick setting. You know, that sounds more like you're in a closed bathroom or something, but if you turn it up, then you get more of that arena type sound. Now, speaking of arena, next we have the arena button. And basically what this does is this determines whether you're going to get more of the natural sound or more of the reverb arena type sound. So if you turn it all the way up, then all you get is the arena sound, but maybe you want to go somewhere in between. And then next we got the dimp button. Now basically what the dimp does is, well, if you have it all the way down, that's going to give you more of an airy type of reverb. But if you turn the dimp up, then a reverb is going to sound a little more muffled. Now, I don't want you to relate muffled with bad because it's not a bad thing. Muffled actually works in a lot of situations where you don't want the reverb to be all up in the user's face. And then the very last knob that we have in a reverb section is the lag button. And all the lag button does is make the reverb be a little late. So let's hear it without the lag. Now let's crank the lag up. As you can hear, the reverb is coming after instead of simultaneously. And now let's go a little more in depth with the delay. So as we already know, this big button is going to give us the automatic echo. But also we have a few other knobs. As you can see, we have speed, we have feed, and we have stereo. Now speed is pretty obvious what it does. It's going to determine how fast the delay occurs. So again, we have the normal delay. But we can go ahead and speed that up. And then also we have the feed button, and this is basically going to determine how many times the delay actually hits. So if we have it very low, you know, we get one delay, but if we turn it up, but you probably don't want it all the way up. You probably want it somewhere in between. And then very last, we have the stereo knob. And what the stereo knob is going to do is it's going to make the delay ping pong between your left and your right speakers. Now let's talk about the Gator a little more in depth. So as we know, if we click here where it says off, we can turn the Gator on by selecting whichever shape that we want. I'm going to select this one. Now let's hear the Gator. Now we can also affect the speed. Now also, if you look under the Gator, conveniently, you'll see this G pluck. G stands for Gator. And if you move this knob down, then your Gator is going to sound a little more plucky. So let's hear it. Now let's talk about the effector a little more in depth. So as you know, you can turn the effector on by just clicking here and selecting either up or down. And you got a riser, but maybe that riser sounds a little too dragged out for you, so you want to speed it up. So let's speed it up a bit by going to a quicker setting. Now real quick, since we already got the effector on, let's make the effector a little more cooler. Let's turn the wobbler on while we still have the effector on. Oh, that's tight. That's dope. Now let's talk about the wobbler a little more in depth. So again, regular sound, turn that wobble on. But but you can also again affect the speed. And you can automate all of these knobs. You can connect them to your MIDI controllers. Now with the wobble, beyond the speed and the main knob, you can actually click this special section and you will see that you got some more options. Again, W stands for wobble. So you can affect the wobble cutoff, the wobble resonance, the wobble phase, and the wobble shape. The wobble cutoff basically determines how exaggerated the effect is, because if it's all the way down, then you're literally going from 0 to 100 real quick. But as you see, if I turn it up, it's not as exaggerated. And it's a similar thing with the resonance as far as making the sound exaggerated. So here we go. And as you can hear, the effect had a little more presence. And over here we have the wobble shape, and you can play with these to determine which shape you want. And then the wobble phase, this determines where on this shape is the wobble going to start. And now the low pass and high pass filters in depth. Now, as we already know, the big knobs is how we get the effect in the first place. So let's go ahead and do that. But also we got two other settings. So we have this green box here with this 12. This is the filter slope. And then right here we have the resonance knob. Now what the slope does is makes it to where you have a more severe filter. That's if you click it and turn it to 24. So here we have the low pass filter. And as you can see, when we put it on 24, the filter took out even more of the high end stuff. And then right here, we have the resonance knob. And basically what this does, to me, I like to say that it gives your filter a little more presence. It makes it more obvious. It gives it a little more balls. So let's hear the filter. So it exaggerates. Now those two principles that we just went over also apply to the high pass filter. So we can turn the high pass filter on, make it a little more severe, give it a little more balls. And now to wrap up, we have a few things that we didn't discuss. That's the ARP, the EQ, and the ADSR. So let's start with the EQ. Now, I'm not going to teach you how to EQ in this video. That's a whole nother subject. But for those of you who do know a little bit about EQ, where you could turn it on, and then you have your 5 bands, you know, just enough to throw in a club. And you can basically use these circle points to enhance certain frequencies of the sound. So give it a little sizzle. So those are your bands, and then you could turn the knobs on by clicking this button, and this will give you a little more control, because not only can you control the frequency and the gain, but you can also control the band width. So if you want bigger bands, then you can go ahead and move this bottom knob down here. So that's the EQ. Next we have the ARP, and I'm going to be quite honest with you, it's not all that robust. I pretty much just use it for rhythm purposes, so I'll just turn it on. And for some of the presets, I've already put in like a little rhythm in there for you, so you can just turn on a preset. And just play around with a little melody that's going to follow the rhythm that's already there. Now the range, this is going to determine how many octaves that the rhythm stretches. So like going from one C to a higher C. So I'm just going to hold the C. But it's not staying at 1 C, it's jumping up, because I changed the range from 0 to 1. Now we also have time. This is going to determine how slow or fast the rhythm is. So let's make it a little slower. And then also we have the steps, and this is just how many steps of rhythm you actually want to deal with. So if you don't want 16 steps, you can turn it to 8. And then also we have the swing and gate knob. Now swing is basically going to get you that old school type of vibe. Basically every second note here is going to be delayed just a little. So let's see. So that's what the swing does. And the gate basically just determines how long or short each note is. So if you have it all the way up, but let's turn it down. Very quick down here in the bottom right section, we've already went through what the vibrato does. It makes your note a little more shaky and vibraty. Vibraty. But then if you had a vibrato on and you don't like the speed, you can adjust the speed with this little black knob here. And lastly, there's the legato button, and the legato button is related to the glide button. Basically, with the legato on, the only way the glide will take effect is if you have two notes that are connecting. So let's try it out. You can look at the keyboard to see that the notes are touching at the same time. Now let's try it with the notes not touching at the same time. No glide. Over here in this bottom left corner, we have your pitch control, so you can actually adjust the pitch by moving this bend wheel if you want. Now, very last, we do have the ADSR controls. This is your attack, decay, sustain, and release. Now, I'm not going to go too in depth with it, but attack is basically if the note is going to fade in or not. If you have it all the way low, then the note is not going to fade in. But if you start adding more attack, then the note fades in. Now I'm going to skip decay for a second and go to sustain. Sustain is basically where you want the note to chill at. So if you don't want the note to actually reach 0, for example, then put it in the middle, and then the note's going to be at 100, and then it's just going to chill at 50% until the note is over. So decay is basically the time that it's going to take to get to the chill spot. So let's turn the decay very low so we can hear this. Did you hear that? So now it's at the chill spot. It started out loud and then it went to the chill spot. Now we can make it to where it starts out loud but then gets to the chill spot a little later. So turn it up. Now it's at the chill spot. And it's going to stay here unless I release the note. And the way that I look at release is how much extra sound do you want after you release the note. So I released the note, there was no extra there. But if I turn the release up, I'm going to turn the release all the way up and push the note super quick and watch that it still stays. Now let's try it a little lower. So release holds on to the note and makes it fade away even if you had already let it go. So that's the TrackGod VST. If you don't yet have the full version of the VST, but you want to invest in this tool to start using it in your beats, then go ahead and click the Get Full VST button. And also, if you had any install troubles, then be sure to hit the Install Help button. So grab the VST so that you can impress your listeners.